it's a lot of good guys training together. So there is certain things that we find disrespectful. I'm sure that a lot of guys did not appreciate the comment he did in my Instagram. I myself, like, I did feel that that's a disrespect. I'm not gonna take it personally, but I did feel like, hey, I was doing something that was really important for me. I posted about it, and he chose to make fun or whatever out of it. So I was like, okay, and I'm sure that many guys look at that and hey, he was a teammate from us, and now he's fighting against one of us, and now he just decides to change, his attitude. So I think that bothers a lot of people. But with that said, I don't know. Maybe at the end, when everything's said and done, he can work a way, to go back into the team.
TMZ Weasel is back. The L's just keep piling up. 3 fighters have just come out and talked about Ian Garry's whole thing about gym etiquette. How bad he is as a teammate, how he doesn't respect his teammates, how he doesn't respect the gym, how he doesn't respect everybody's time there. He comes on his own time, whenever he wants. He brings his wife to the gym, and he brings cameras, which could be very uncomfortable for the other fighters there. I mean, you gotta have respect for the gym, right? Leon Edwards, Michael Chandler, and now Vicente Luque have talked about Ian Garry's situation with getting kicked out and finding gyms. And both Vicente Luque and Michael Chandler are from Killcliff. They're from the same exact gym, which Ian Garry, I guess at this point, used to train at. That's what Luque is pretty much alluding to. He didn't say it outright. He didn't say exactly that Ian Garry's not there anymore, but he definitely alluded to it by saying he can come back. The coach does have a good relationship with him, so it'd be nice to see him back one day. He said the teammates found what he said disrespectful on Instagram when he commented under Vicente Luque's post saying that he's Jesus standing over him. And Luque spoke a lot of truth about what goes around comes around the whole Neil Magny situation. Him talking so badly about Neil Magny, putting so much hate towards the guy to the point where his comments could have had an impact on Neil Magny's child custody situation. And Luque is saying, it's no wonder you're getting hate back at you. Luque doesn't like what people are saying about, Ian Garry's relationships and stuff. But at the same time, Ian Garry does talk about other people and it just comes back at him.
Ian is a guy that is really, he's outspoken. He speaks about people. The whole Neil Magny thing went to another level, to another proportion. So at the same time, I'm like, okay, when you talk, you got to be willing to listen as well, and he created a lot of hate towards Neil Magny, and now maybe he's getting a lot of hate towards him.
You guys remember that older interview like 3 months ago when Ian Garry was talking about what he said about Neil Magny and Jeff Neal was absolutely in the bounds? It did not cross the boundaries or anything. It was fair game. It was actually perfect in his opinion.
I have not stepped over any single bounds. Neil Magny said the words he said. I just set them on a bigger platform to a bigger stage and repeated his own words to himself. The only person he has to blame for those words is himself. He didn't apologize. He didn't take back what he said. Jeff Neal, there is no argument. Jeff Neal fucked up in his lifetime and got a mugshot. Absolutely, I'm going to use and abuse that if I'm going to be your opponent. I got so deep in that man's mind that he didn't even make it to the fight. He was so pissed off. I haven't overstepped any boundaries yet. When it comes to trash talk, if anything, I've been perfect.
And it's quite funny, that's his thought on all of it. But then to see him go after Sean Strickland in the DMs, threatening him, to see the kind of impact it could have had on Neil Magny's actual personal life. And not just these few fighters, there's plenty of other fighters from Henry Cejudo to Kevin Holland, etc. that don't have a good view on Ian Garry. And it's no wonder it spilled out to the fans too. The fans and the fighters both have turned against Ian Garry, and it all stemmed off of the Neil Magny fight. That's where a lot of this originated from for most of the people, which is completely dirty to paint someone in the worst light possible like that, to the point where it can have an actual, real negative effect on not only Neil Magny, but also his children. We know how a lot of the custody battles are in the United States, where I don't know if Ian Garry is aware about how stacked against men it actually is. And even Anthony Smith has come out and said that whole thing there is really doesn't sit right with him either. It doesn't sit well with a lot of people, man.
Every interaction I've ever had with him is positive. I will say, though, the one thing that I will be very strong about with Ian Garry is the Neil Magny thing. really fucking bothers me. It's one thing to like create some drama, but not at the expense of the reputation of someone that's as good of a man as Neil Magny.
But the biggest issue of it all is that Ian Garry has been such a hypocrite about it, because as soon as people come back at him, he gets upset. He goes and cries in that corner. He goes and threatens Sean Strickland, specifically was the guy who was trash talking him. He threatened Sean Strickland in his DMs and stuff. Like, you cannot make the boundaries. The boundaries are set. If you're bringing up stuff about someone's children, you're talking about someone's mugshots and other stuff about their personal lives, don't get shocked when fighters start bringing up stuff about you as well. If you're talking about anything personal about a fighter, you cannot get shocked that fighters going to bring up stuff personal about you as well. And in that same interview, credit to the interviewer, they asked him about Conor McGregor. What are his thoughts about Conor bringing up stuff about Dustin Poirier's wife?
That was a line I could have crossed in this build-up to this fight, but I didn't. I understand what you mean when it, like, your wife was in with DMs, the kind of thing with Dustin. I get that. Conor's a very intelligent man, and the way he built up fights and the way he got people emotionally invested was building up a storyline, was building up animosity that was there or wasn't there. When we see Michael Jordan compete as one of the best competitors we've ever seen compete, he manifested and manipulated. And
there he's like, oh, Conor is like a Michael Jordan figure. He needs to bring that competitive edge, and it's not the same thing. Yes, it is exactly the same thing. But the thing is, nobody got upset about Conor saying that, right? A lot of people didn't care as much because he doesn't care what people say about him. He doesn't act like Ian Garry when people say stuff about him. A lot of people thought what Conor McGregor said was kind of funny, and that was it. They moved on. The only reason why fans have turned against Ian Garry so much is because he's being such a hypocrite about it. He gets upset when people say stuff about him, but it's okay if he says stuff about other people. And Ian Garry believes what he said about Neil Magny is only reiterating what Magny said. No, okay, the words kind of, right? But you could interpret words in different ways. The way he was interpreting what Neil Magny was saying, being accustomed to whoopings and stuff, he made it seem like Neil Magny is powerbombing his son and clotheslining him and all this stuff. Like, that's what he made it seem like for a lot of fans. And he kept going at it over and over again nonstop. He flicked them off after the fight and everything. There may be a disagreement about how to discipline your child or something. But again, if you're going to go that direction and interpret things in that way, then you can't get mad that people are interpreting his relationship with his wife and wife's ex-husband, all this stuff in a different way as well. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. But you cannot get upset if people are interpreting things incorrectly. Just how he interpreted what Neil Magny said incorrectly as well. 99% of the people knew exactly what Neil Magny was talking about. And it was not the way that Ian Garry was painting him as. He painted Neil Magny in the worst light possible. Now, surely he cannot be hypocritical if Leon and Colby double team in the press conference. The fact that Ian Garry thinks nothing he said was overstepping the boundaries, but what people said about him is overstepping the boundaries, gives credit to Leon Edwards and Michael Chandler about what they were talking about as to why this guy was getting kicked out of gyms or him having bad gym etiquette, how they disagree him with how to behave as a teammate. It's been said now. Leon Edwards came out there and said the reason why Ian Garry was kicked out of his gym, and he believes out of other people's gyms as well, multiple of them, was not because he's in the same weight class as Leon or other fighters. It has nothing to do with that. That's what Ian Garry believes it's about. Ian Garry, according to Leon, said that he was kicked out because he's the same weight class as Leon and they can't have two different ranked fighters in the same division training with each other. That is not what it is at all. Leon said the reason he was kicked out is because he was pretty much being a diva. He was bringing his wife to training, which could be quite uncomfortable for teammates if you're continuously doing that. Wow, she really scouting like that? It's not a bad gym to scout out. He's bringing a camera around. He's late to the sessions. He doesn't show up sometimes. This is actually something Michael Chandler said as well. Michael Chandler said the only thing that really ticks him off about Ian Garry is that he doesn't show up sometimes. He comes in late sometimes. And he's selfish in the training room. He's more about himself than the team. That's what ticks Michael Chandler off about him.
He's very much a me kind of fighter, whereas I've always been a we kind of fighter, focus on the team more than myself. And he's more of a, hey, I know exactly what to do. I'm the guy who steps inside the cage kind of guy. Man, I don't know about the gym etiquette. I mean, he doesn't show up on time all the time, and he doesn't show up at every practice, which really ticks me off. But that ticks me off about anybody else. There's only a few people that I would actually say have perfect gym etiquette when it comes to that, Gilbert Burns being one of them.
And Michael Chandler is a very positive guy. I mean, he did sugarcoat it a lot. He was trying to be very nice about his disagreements with Ian Garry. He still considers him a teammate and all that stuff. You know, Michael Chandler's a very nice guy, very positive. But he even had things to say about Ian Garry's gym etiquette that aligns with what Leon Edwards was saying. And maybe others if he did get kicked out of other gyms as well. And I know some people say, oh, but it's a selfish sport. Of course, you're going to think about yourself rather than the team. If you've ever been a part of a gym, not just bounced around like Ian Garry is now, if you've ever been part of a gym, the only time you could be selfish is if you're in training camp preparing for a fight. That is it. Every single other time you're training in a gym, you are there for the team because the team pretty much dictates if you're going to be part of the gym or not, or if they're going to help you or not. If you're not helping the team is not going to help you. And if the team has a problem with how you're doing things, it's going to get to the gym owner, and the gym owner is going to kick you out. Also, a good brotherly environment in a gym excels everybody's abilities. So the only time you could be selfish is in training camp preparing for a fight. That is it. And according to Leon and Chandler, it seems like Ian Garry is selfish most of the times he's coming into the gym. If he's coming in with cameras and his wife and only showing up when he wants to, the guy is thinking like he's some kind of superstar already that he could do these kind of things. Conor McGregor, when he was young, he was not doing these kind of things, right? Not even Conor behaved the way Ian Garry is. And now hearing what Ian is saying about, not overstepping boundaries, it's quite insane with all the stuff that came his way, from Leon Edwards to Sean Strickland, now Michael Chandler, even Diego Sanchez is saying stuff about him. The guy's extremely arrogant, right? He's very full of himself out there. That's exactly what Diego Sanchez said too. Diego Sanchez believes the downfall of Ian Garry is his arrogance. It's quite insane how a fighter who looked at as like some interesting, promising prospect, could probably become a champion one day, is the next integration of the Fighting Irish, turned out to become one of the most hated fighters on the roster by the fans and even the fighters. There's other fighters that are coming out saying things about Ian Garry as well. It's crazy how someone made such a big 180 after the Neil Magny fight. That was the 180 of his career.